All right, folks. In the last lesson, I had you do some activities that looked at how do you start with JavaScript, how do you assign basic variables, how do you do some math to them. And those are going to be fundamental to moving forward and building your games. There's a couple of things we need to work with, including understanding variables. You're going to see in JavaScript a couple different variable type declarations, meaning that JavaScript has a couple different ways you can tell the computer that you want something stored into memory. All right, that's what a variable does. Is it stores a little fact of data into the computer's memory. And up until now, you've been working with var, short for variable. But that's not the only way you're going to see it written, and it's not the way we're going to be writing it in this class. There is a var has been part of JavaScript since the 90s, since forever. But there's two newer ways of doing it, and that's the type of syntax that we're going to be using in this class as we go forward. And it's going to be let and const. So we'll go over some examples of this, and I can show you how this would work and why you'd use one over another. So up until now, you've been using var. What we haven't done is done like saving bits of text into memory. So we can start with that. We can use var, and let's set up a variable var name, and we can just set it up to be my name. Okay, and what we just did is we told the computer that we want to save a bit of text in memory under the name. We can do the same thing with a number, let's say. We can do the same thing with what you've done so far. Var age equals 34. Okay. And they're two different colors. I'll explain that in a little bit as to why they're two different colors. So once we have var name and var age, what var means is that this variable can be changed. So if I take out age, or just move it down for a second. So we declare name up here, var name, and we can redefine that memory. We can redefine what name is supposed to be. So we can do name equals, I'll do John Smith. Okay, so now we have our name equals MJ, but now computers are going to read it from the top down, left to right, and it's going to say var name, MJ Linane. The next line is, okay, no, name is not MJ Linane. Name is actually John Smith. Okay. To see what the computer knows, we can use something called console log. And what that means is that when you're doing your exercises on REPL, it'll be down below. But over here, there's going to be a little box over here. And what we can do is console.log is a place for developers to see information behind the scenes on web pages. So it's just for developers. It's not for the users going to your website. You're not going to be printing any information to them in the console log. This is just for you. But what it does is it gives us the ability to, when we run it, we could take a look and we see MJ Linane. So what this did is it console logged. It logged to the console my name. But if we do it after we redefine it, console.log name, and we run it, we see that John Smith is now being named. Why? Because at first we defined it as name as MJ Linane, and then we told it to the log to the console. Next thing we did is we defined it name equals name gets John Smith, and we console logged the name, but the name had changed by this point. Okay, we changed it on line 6. So we can take var. Var is basically a variable that can be overwritten later in the program. Okay. Let's talk a little bit before we move on to let and const. Let's talk about when you set up your variables. Okay, there are certain rules naming rules that you can and can't do. So, for instance, you can start. Let's see. I'll do comments. Can start with a number or a letter, or an underscore, or a $sign. These are perfectly legal. Cannot start with a So yeah, I mean, let me clarify. So you cannot start with a number like 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can start with a number like 1. Okay. So that is the trade-off. You can't actually start it with a number because you'll be looking for it, but if you spell out the number 1, that's perfectly legal. All right. I want to make sure I clarified that so you don't actually put like 1, 2, 3 name or something like that. JavaScript will yell at you over that. Okay. Also, we'll do naming styles. So you'll see a couple different styles when you are looking up code or when you try to write code, and there's the sort of the JavaScript traditional way to do it, but we can do something like var. Let's see, name. Actually, I'll do first name. Okay, so I lowercase the first one and uppercase the second one equals MJ, and this is called Camel Case. This is basically what we're going to use inside JavaScript. Every programming language has their own sort of way of doing it. Whether they force that on you or not is up to the language. But we can do var first name. We could do something like this. Okay, and this is just simply underscore. And then we can do var first name. So we capitalize both the first letter and second letter equals MJ. This is called Pascal case. Okay. All three of these will work in JavaScript. JavaScript doesn't really care. Follow your heart and do whichever one makes sense to you. Okay. All right. Let's get to the other one, which is let and const. So with let, we would do the same thing as we did above, which is we set up a var, right? Var name. We have to basically tell the computer that we're going to be saving something in memory. So we would do something like let. And then instead of var, we could do let name equals MJ the name. Okay. Now it's going to throw an error here because we already defined name above. So in order for this not to throw an error, what I can do is I can add these little slashes and make it green. What that means is that it's now a comment, and JavaScript will not run that code. It will not run any code that is green like this after 2 slashes. It doesn't even see it. Okay. So then if we run this, nothing will happen because we have to actually console log it. Console.log name. Okay, we see MJ the name. All right. Okay, very good. So we see name. Now we can do the same thing as we did above. We can do name equals Jane Doe. Jane Doe. There we go. And we see it's still MJ the name. We console log it. And we see the same thing we saw above, MJ the name and Jane Doe. Let shares a lot of similarities with var in that you can redefine it. You can override that memory. There are some limitations when we get to other things in JavaScript where it will want a let, or it's better to put a let. Basically, going forward, I would say that anything we're going to do, anything I'm going to show you, anything we're going to go over, we're going to be using let instead of var. Just because it's a better way of doing it, but you will see code that does have that in there. And I just want you to let you know that it's okay to use it. It's okay for other programs to use it. It's the way that it was done, for 15 years or so. So there's a lot of code out there with it, but that's not the way we're going to be doing it going forward. Okay. Now let's talk about const. What makes const special? Well, what const is going to do, I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't yell at us. What const is going to do is const is going to make it a constant, make it so we can't change that variable. We cannot redefine it. So to show you this, let's do the same thing. Let's do, instead of let, let's do const name equals MJ. And then below, let's do, let's console log it just to show you. Okay. So MJ, yeah, it's fine. Let's leave it as MJ. So it does the same thing as above, right? No big deal. Same thing as let, same thing as var. But then if we go do name equals, like Evan, let's say, console.log name. Okay, we get an error here. And what it says is invalid assignment to const name. And it gives us a line. It gives us line 30, okay, and first character. So it's saying right here, right when it goes to read name, it's like, whoa, 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 you can't do that. You can't do name gets Evan, right? That doesn't make sense because const is up here. It's an MJ. It's always a constant. You cannot redefine it. This thing that's printing on here is the original console log. Yeah, so we just see the error here. Okay, so we cannot redefine name. So this seems like a bit of a problem, right? Why would we want to do this, right? So const, I'll do a little comment here, cannot reassign. So why would we do const as opposed to just doing let or a var? Why would we want something that we can't change in memory? Well, there are cases that you'd want to save a bit of data and not have it change. Okay, for instance, if you had a list of something, say a list of your siblings or something. And yeah, I know siblings can change, but let's take a person and let's do their birth date. So we could do const. We haven't gone over this yet, but we'll get to it later on. Const person equals, and we could put brackets here. We can create an object that's a person, and we'll get to objects later on. But I'll show you real quick. So if we're going to do something like this, where name is MJ, and then we can do age 34. So here we have an object that we don't want to change. Things are not going to be changing about this. I mean, yes, I know that the age can change or the name could change, like legally and stuff like that. But let's say maybe it wasn't age, maybe it was a birth date, right? And we had, let's see, a string for birth date, January 1st, 1980. This is not my birthday, but just say. Okay, so we have a birth date in there, January 1st, 1980. That is not going to change. There is no way to go back and change your birth date. So in this case, we have a person we're going to be working with. We have their name. We have their birth date. We don't want to be changing that. And so that's why we would use const instead of let on this one, because we possibly could go and change that information later on. Okay, and I can show you this as to why we would not want to do this. We could do person.name equals Sarah, let's say. Okay, and actually it's still yelling at me about this one. Okay, and then what if we did console.log and we did person, yeah, let's see what we got in person. Okay. So here's all right, so here's something that happened here. So what we did is we actually changed a bit of information about that person. We changed the person's name because here properties cannot be changed. But if we went to go redefine that person, okay, let's say person equals MJ, okay, it will throw an error on line 41. So while we can have a person, we can have properties about them, okay, we have this object here. Yes, we can change the properties because that's right. These are not necessarily variables that can be changed. We can change properties, but we cannot redefine that value of a person once it's been declared. Okay, so we have var, let, and const. And with those three, by far, you're going to see var the most in older code. Let and const are going to be the newer way that we're going to be doing it. And we're going to be seeing that in the lessons that we use going forward.